David got his start, and David, you can correct me on this. David got his start about when he was 22 years old with a spec script that he sent in to Star Trek. And this was the most popular Star Trek episode of all time, called The Trouble with Tribbles. And yeah, that was his. Since then, he was a writer on Land of the Lost. Remember Sid and Marty Krofft's Land of the Lost? He is the inventor of Sleestack. He is the one that caused all of your nightmares. It's his fault. David's written for Babylon 5, for Sliders, for The Twilight Zone. He's a Nebula and Hugo award-winning science fiction author. You probably know him from his series, The War with the Couture, and with his novella short story, Man Folded Himself. Let's see, and most recently the author of the autobiographical book called The Martian Child, which was made into a movie starring John Cusack very recently. So these are, this is his legacy. He's an old pro. He teaches screenwriting. He has experience as a director and as a producer and as a writer, and he's going to share with us his thoughts and help us understand how to make our stories better and more saleable and or just more concise. So,
what I like to do is find that part of the format that is the most limiting and challenging. And you can see the trouble with Tribbles. Prior to that, every episode of Star Trek, they were saving the entire galaxy from the giant, world-beating machine or the space amoeba or whatever. And it was always so serious, we have to fight God again. And I said, don't they ever have little problems? Wouldn't it be a funny little problem if they had a cute little critter like this, like a Tribble, and nobody realizes it's a problem because they're all looking at the Klingons and this and that. In other words, I said, let's bring the scale way down and do a little problem 1 week. And by contrast, it worked. It's one of the reasons the Tribble episode stands out so much from all the other episodes, because it is told on a human scale. And like, for instance, the first Star Wars, A New Hope, is a great epic which takes you all over the galaxy. But it's not a character story. Whereas if you go to a nice little picture that came out last year called Moon, there's only 2 characters in the story. Actually, it's even 1 character. And it is about what he discovers. It's a beautiful little bottle story, very, very cleanly, crisply told for not a lot of money. And it had a lot more character intensity than a lot of movies, simply because there's the question, who is this guy, why is he here, and what's the big mystery?
So now, would those elements be the essential elements of what you just said, of any story? Let's go down to basics. What do we have to think of as the essential elements of any story we want to tell, whether it's a big one or a small story?
Great question. Let me back into it. I used to teach at Pepperdine for about 20 years. And I used to do something terrible to the students. The first session, I would ask them, what is a story? If I put it on the board, what is a story? And I'd ask them to answer the question. And we get all kinds of writer BS. Oh, it's conflict, it's drama, it's a metaphor, it's all the writer jargon. And after listening, and I would just put it all on the board, and eventually fill the board with all the stuff that came straight out of all these terrible writing books that they had read, and just emptying, just dumping. And finally, I would, say, who feels enlightened? Who now understands what a story is? Of course, no hands would go up. I'd say, so how the hell can you people write stories if you don't even know what a story is? You can't even explain what it is you're trying to do because you don't even know what a story is. So how the hell can you write one if you don't even know what it is? And, of course, you can do that to college students. So we would then spend the rest of the semester saying, all right, let's look at the elements of a story. first hour, what are the two most essential things you have to have in the story? What is it absolutely you have to have in the story, or there's no story? I want to do that here, except we'd be here for an extra hour or two. But the first one is a person. The story is always about a person. The story is never about an inanimate object like a rock. There is a very funny book that was written about 40 years ago called The Incredible Thrilling Adventures of the Rock. And the book is a little picture book, and nothing happens for the entire book except once a glacier pushes the rock a little bit. So, your story is about a person. Well, that's not enough, because a person can sit there like a rock for a couple hundred years and nothing happens, and that's not exciting either. So the other part of the story is that the person has a problem. It can either be a problem that he has chosen, like, I want to build a spaceship and go to the moon. That's where you get your story's about a lot of people. Or it's a problem that has chosen him, like a comet is headed to kill everything. So you have two kinds of problems. One is a challenge and the other is a crisis. Most of the stories we see in the movies are about problems that have chosen the hero. And the hero has no choice except to deal with the problem. My daughter's been kidnapped. That was Taken with Liam Neeson, or some,
or a young girl's strength.
A story, you can write this part down. A story is about a person with a problem. The rest is just details. So when you pitch your story, your first sentence is, this is about a person who has this problem. This is about a cowboy who has to find the Indian who kidnapped his niece. This is about a toy cowboy who's afraid he's going to be replaced by a toy spaceman. This is about a young girl who gets pregnant and how she works it out with her family. That's Juno. This is about two guys who decide they're hungry for White Castle burgers one night. And they get stoned, and the whole picture is about their misadventures on the way to White Castle. And so on. Now, obviously, you need to be more detailed than that, but if you can't tell your story in one sentence, this is about this person who has this problem, you don't know what your story's about.